Good gravy. This episode of the Not Too Social Hour is going to be all about shitheads who have bored the piss out of me at one time or another. Some years ago, I had the misfortune of drinking. I considered the guy a friend, a drinking buddy. Once a month, we'd get together, drink a few beers, watch some videos, and chat. And the guy was a crashing bore, but I tolerated his company because I considered the guy a friend from way back. We are no longer friends. He had been a bore for many years and I'd kind of put up with it. And then it sort of came to a head one night. And it wasn't me. He blew up at me and I'd been courteous to the asshole all along. Anyhow, he was in a bad mental state, quite drunk. The guy's had a history of deviant bullshit and I don't know why I hung with the asshole, but it was my poor taste and I'm a bit of a schmuck. Anyhow, he got off on me, started yelling at me, complaining that I had unfair advantages in life, and there was some sheepskin in my extended family, and he came from, a family of, well, whatever, troglodytes. But he was mad because he had gone to the same college that I attended at, first, as in my late teens, early 20s. He and I were about the same age. He had paid the mother load of tuition himself to get a bachelor's degree from this college, and it was a good college. I got free tuition. I actually felt guilty about this. My father was an instructor at the same college, and it was a benefit of his job, free tuition for faculty brats, even when they're goofy adults like me. I admit it, I felt guilty about it. It is unfair to people who have to pay a very high price to get an education. Unfortunately, this individual got a diploma at his own expense from the same college, and he's an asshole. He was an asshole before he went in, and he's an asshole after. And this was like 30 years after the fact. We were both over 50 this evening. We were both drunk. He went off on me first about, he was angry because I had an unfair advantage, and he was harboring a grudge. And this prick has a history of deviant misconduct and vindictive behaviors, so of course I wasn't too thrilled with the asshole that evening. He was booming about this thing he had done about 20 years before that. He was 35 years old, at the time, and he was dating a 16-year-old, and he got in no trouble. He was bragging about how great the sex was. He then asked me during this rant of his if I had anything similar in my background, like the jerk wanted to commiserate with me about a sex offense or whatever. Not a chance. I knew by this point the guy was a sick asshole, and he was looking for, commonality. This is serious, pathetic shit. I'm losing the thread of my rant here. Okay, first he accused me of having an unfair advantage in any success I may have had as a writer, or failure that he had as one, because we're both writers and his writing really stinks. So anyway, any success I had was undeserved, and any failure he had was the fault of people who had an unfair advantage, and this prick was always trying to prove somebody had one over him, and he was simply an untalented moron. I used to be a nice guy about this shit. I used to be supportive towards people who were having difficulty with their writing career, but of course, I'm a schmuck. I learned. I'm older, and I learned my fucking lesson. The story gets better because after he got a bachelor's degree from a half-decent college at his own expense, he went on to a miserable and floundering career in social services and wherever. He's had a string of shitty jobs. So have I. We had that in common. I used to be a nice guy about being a low roller. I'm very angry about it now, but I get back to my rant about an ex-friend asshole. He was screaming that later that he had gotten a master's degree from another college, which I also went to afterwards. I got a bachelor's degree from a shitty state college, and he got his master's degree from the same shitty state college. I was a lousy student, I don't care who knows it. I had a lot of problems when I was a young man, I'll admit that too. This guy was just a worse case. I mean, he's a real spineless piece of shit. A dickless, malicious piece of garbage. Dickless people have to attack the people closest to them when they're upset and frustrated. This guy had a propensity for a low level of maturity when drunk or depressed. And though it's probably even a clinical mental problem, I still really hate this bastard's guts. Actually, many evenings I was an empathetic Nimrod type while this guy was having an emotional problem. I was getting to the part in his rant when he was going off about how he has a master's degree and he has to work in the state store. Like he's entitled, you know, not to work at a state store and, of course, someplace more prestigious. He and I were both heading towards our twilight motherfucking years, you know. I too wished I had a job where you get lots of pussy, like, a college faculty person at a state university might. This guy was too much of an asshole to get a teaching post. If he had not been an asshole, he might have actually he had failed socially at both colleges. The guy has social emotional problems, and it accounts for his failure to develop positive relations at two colleges that I know of. And he was at that point over 50, so was I. We're both over 50 at the time. But he was in a sick motherfucking rant. He was also lashing out at me, which is why I still get angry about it. He's a real sick piece of shit. I had taken a goodly amount of shit. I used to be a real wimp. I still am. No, I was always a pretty weak-willed kind of person. I don't care who knows it. I'm not a tough guy. And I also I'm a genuinely empathetic individual, if you want the fucking snot-nosed truth. It's the facts. And I used to actually listen to people's sick, hopeless bullshit, like, as in the case with this piece of shit. That last incident, the incident I'm talking about, he was really out. He was booming out his bullshit. He was complaining that he had to work at the state store, after achieving a master's degree. I've heard of people getting a master's degree and then publishing material in the New York Times, and, this jerk hasn't done that, and, he was too busy working at the state store. Well, I'm going to jump ahead to the aftermath. This is the incident I'm just talking. That was years ago, and I still get a little pissed, and it comes to mind. That's why I'm ranting. I haven't spoken to the asshole in about 5 years. Luckily I haven't seen him because he's not attractive. What the fuck was I going to do? Oh, I see him on Facebook. He has a couple Facebook friends in common with myself. And every once in a while I see his comments under somebody's thread. And one of them, and this was in a community of civilized people, he would post the word bullshit under people's, comments with no explanation of what and why. Apparently it takes a master's degree to write the word bullshit. I mean, he has a master's in political science, and there wasn't really much political discourse going on. Not much. He never, I don't care for it when people express acrimony without, at the very least, explaining what their position is and why. This in part explains, too, why the douchebag has a master's degree and works at the state store. Also, why a person who simply posts the word bullshit with an exclamation mark under a comment, and actually a thoughtful comment, incidentally, that may not agree with his position. But anyhow, I wanted to go back over part of his rant. It was quite spectacular. He was actually gesticulating and waving his arms in the air, bellowing, cheering for himself as he sort of actually pantomimed sex with a 16-year-old when he was 35. He met a disturbed and troubled 16-year-old girl, a peace activist at a peace organization, a long-standing peace organization local to here, won't say which one. And they met and started dating. I presume he impressed her because it was like his MO to impress people with his exceedingly important political work, which never netted much of a result. This guy was obsessed with conflicts in Nicaragua some years back, and I think he succeeded at nothing except perhaps, raising concern. At one point, he may have had to be, I don't know, sedated before he attempted to intercede and get jailed. This guy was a real schmuck. Anyhow, he had been dating for however long, essentially an underage person. He got away with it. He was bragging loudly about getting away with having sex with an underage person. And then he asked me, did you, his voice was just booming when he was talking about his courses of action there. And then in a little, a cautious little voice, he said, do you have anything like that in your background? And of course I said no. I also knew at that point I could trust that asshole as far as I could throw him. I'd already let the prick backstab me a number of times because I can be a wimp. Anywho, I'd like to think I'm less of a wimp. I'm still not a strong man. I never was. I'm 61 years old. I'm never going to be, the strongest kind of person there is. But it's still possible to increase one's strength. It is still possible to improve one's ethical conduct. I'm trying to be a better motherfucker. Whatever. This is the Not Too Social Hour. Thanks for listening to my rant.